Good morning. What a week it's turning out to be. Home Minister Amit Shah told the opposition leader the other day that while the BJP may have fallen short in its dealing with the pandemic, what did you do? And the same story seems to be getting replicated in Delhi, where day before yesterday, as well as again yesterday, Deputy Chief Minister Manish Sisodia basically said that the numbers in the pandemic in Delhi are going to increase dramatically, and when that happens, then Delhi falls short of beds. Will the Lieutenant Governor Anil Baijal be responsible for Delhi citizens not being able to find beds or not? So it's becoming a huge political battle out there when actually all political parties should be working together to find a solution. The Delhi problem, as we've talked about, is becoming it's getting way out of hand. The Delhi government has got about roughly 9,000 beds, or maybe a little less than that. And we had talked about yesterday. We had talked about a panel report. We said that the government would need about 43,000 beds by the middle of July. And yesterday, the Deputy Chief Minister said that we'll actually need about 80,000 beds. So that's a nine-fold increase here. Now, it is possible that part of this is an exaggeration, partly, just playing politics to hype up the numbers to make the Lieutenant Governor look, and therefore the Prime Minister, to make the Lieutenant Governor and the Prime Minister look responsible for Delhi's crisis. But it's very clear that the Delhi government has handled this very, very badly. It has been very, very slow off the mark in building up capacity. I think firstly it underestimated the spread, then it didn't build up capacity, then it started doing these piecemeal things that converting hotels into hospitals. Just the other day they passed an order asking for 5 hotels to be converted into hospitals. And as we report today, two of those hotels are actually in court right now. So frankly, as we've argued before, as we've argued again today, it's time to call in the army. We need to have some field hospitals out there, and that's the only way this problem is going to get resolved. Our lead editorial today talks about how we go into the details of what the Chief Minister has said, and we condemn this for a very simple reason. We say that India is one country. India is one country because people are free to move across borders, goods and services move across borders. If the Delhi Chief Minister says today that Delhi hospital beds are going to be kept only for Delhi citizens, what happens tomorrow if one state says that I'm sorry, but no water from my state is going to go across to another? If mineral-rich states say that no, the coal in my state has to be used in my state, I will not allow the iron ore to go out. So we are asking for serious trouble, and to that extent, Lieutenant Governor Anil Baijal did very well to call Mr. Kejriwal's bluff. In fact, we've even seen before that such orders cannot even withstand the scrutiny of the High Court. So one doesn't know what kind of game Mr. Kejriwal is playing. Clearly, he was trying to pass on the blame because the government has been caught napping. I think, but we'll look at those issues later. It's really probably more important right now for the central government and the state government to get together, to sit down. The Lieutenant Governor had a meeting yesterday where he took stock of what is happening. But frankly, I think he should no longer be relying on what the Delhi government says it will be able to build. It's just time to call in the army now and look at really dramatically scaling up operations. Otherwise, Delhi citizens are going to be left looking for a bed in just a matter of a few weeks from now. While the focus has been on Delhi and Bombay, not surprising given their size, as we discussed today by looking at data, one of the worst cities seems to be Ahmedabad. It has a very, very high death rate, which tells you that either the infection numbers are being understated or the hospital management is very, very poor. The city is already at almost full capacity when it comes to COVID beds, and the spread has not even taken place right now. If you look at Ahmedabad and you look at the number of infections it has per million people, if you look at that graphic, if you look at the number of infected people it has per million, it's much smaller than that of other cities. So that's likely to grow. So the city will be caught napping. So clearly something needs to be done very quickly in Ahmedabad. Kolkata is another story altogether because the numbers are very, very low of infection. Once again, those numbers are unbelievable. The death rates of Calcutta are too high, once again suggesting the infection is very low or the hospital management is very poor. The testing rates, unfortunately, we don't have enough details of the testing rate there. So clearly, Kolkata and Ahmedabad are two cities that require a lot of attention. Not enough attention is being paid to them. In the case of Calcutta, the union government has been arguing that the Mamata Banerjee government is trying to suppress data, and there's been a lot of back and forth out there. But as far as Gujarat is concerned, this is a BJP state. So frankly, if a BJP central government and a BJP state can't be working to figure out what's going on, there's a huge problem that we have out there. The WHO's reputation got another big blow yesterday when suddenly out of the blue it decided to say that there was no evidence that asymptomatic people actually went around spreading the disease. The common belief among medical practitioners and health workers and epidemiologists has been that the asymptomatic people are never caught, they're never traced, so they go around spreading the disease, and which is why the infection is spreading the way as fast as it is. So the WHO suddenly came and said, no, that's not true at all. The asymptomatic people don't seem to be transmitting the disease at all. Later, fortunately, the WHO actually tried to clarify this, and they basically had a live social media discussion where they said that actually the number is closer to 40%. What 40% means is not clear, but essentially the WHO's reputation, such as it is, took another bashing. Closer home, while the ICMR had been doing a sero survey, basically to figure out what the spread of infection is in various parts of the country. There were some leaked press reports which suggested that in containment areas like in Delhi and in hotspots, or in the containment area of the hotspots, the spread of the disease was, as many as 15 to 30% of the population seemed to be affected by the coronavirus. The ICMR later denied that study, but frankly, the sooner it puts out those numbers, the better. And as we've argued before, if you actually find that 15 to 30% of the population is infected, that's probably good news, because it tells you that the virus is a lot less lethal than we thought it was. So essentially it means that about 30% of the population is infected, whereas the numbers of people going to the hospital or dying are probably what they are. So if those numbers are what they are, when 15 to 30% of the population is infected, it means the virus is a lot less potent than we thought it was. So the sooner that the ICMR puts out that data, the better it is for all of us. Moving away from COVID, it's an interesting story. We saw over the last few weeks, the real estate sector has been asking for a lot of concessions. They've been telling the government that they're completely bankrupt. They've been telling the banks that they cannot afford to be repaying their loans. It's been a sector in trouble for a long time. What made this interesting is that just a few days ago, Commerce Minister, Railway Minister Piyush Goyal basically read the riot act to the real estate companies and told them, listen, you've been trying long enough. For God's sake, just drop your prices and sell your inventory. And once you drop your prices and sell your inventory, you'll get better cash flow and things will start improving. Now we did a study of this, and it turns out that the real estate companies on their own, they may be to blame, but on their own they can't do that much. This is because in a lot of areas, in places like Delhi, you have what is called the circle rate. In places like Bombay, you have what is called a ready reckoner rate. Now, the ready reckoner rate or the circle rate is the rate at which the local government registers that property. So if you sell a flat at below the ready reckoner rate, you will still have to register it at the ready reckoner rate. Maybe there'll even be some inquiries into why you are selling the flat, and the assumption will be that you sold the flat in black. Well, as our study, in places like Parel, for example, the flat prices have fallen quite a lot, and there's just a 6% difference now between the ready reckoner rate and the flat rate. So essentially, if flat prices have to be brought down further, this cannot be done unless the local government start reducing the ready reckoner rate. If it wasn't bad enough that the global export scenario looks really dismal, we have a story today which essentially says that with a lot of iconic stores like J.C. Penney, for example, shutting down, Indian exporters have another problem on their hands because their dues are also got stuck. Fortunately, these dues are not very large, but when you're in a crisis, when you're in a liquidity crunch, every bit of money matters. In the past, whenever you've heard of, in the recent past, when you've heard of big hacking events, there's been this Israeli firm Pegasus which has been involved, and it's basically been firms of the developed world which have been involved. Well, this time around, Reuters has an investigation where it says an Indian company called Beltrox Infotech seems to be at the center of a lot of hacking, and so we got to see where that goes. The interesting thing is that this company in 2015 also, this company was charged with hacking, so we've got to see where this investigation goes. Interesting thing is, while many in the government and social media in particular talk about boycotting Chinese goods, as though it's very, very simple. We have a story today which points out that the largest selling number of phones in India are the sub 15,000 phones in terms of smartphones. The largest number of phones that are being sold are the sub 15,000 phones, and those are the phones where there's a real problem because of the lockdown and because various issues like that. A lot of Chinese components and Chinese phones are not coming in, so the market is desperately starved for Chinese phones out there. So I'd like to see, I mean, we can keep talking about boycotting Chinese goods, but given their price points, it's going to be very, very difficult to do anything of the sort. The evidence in the recovery continues to be patchy. So, for example, we had a story yesterday about how Hyundai had been ramping up production. Today, we have a story about how Manpower, the consultants, say that hiring is not surprisingly at a all-time sort of low. But at the same time, we have another story which talks about that in the education, in the edtech sector, what is now called edtech, education technology sector, hiring seems to be going on. I think the health sector will probably see some more, a lot more, in fact, hiring out there. So you're not going to get a clear picture on where the economy is going for the next few months. We've seen, for example, if you look at this week, for example, in the first week of June, the e-way bills being generated by the GST authorities, that seems to be about 20% less than what it was in the same month last year. So that suggests a recovery. I think a lot of this, it's early days. Some of this is pent-up demand. Some of this is, just catching up on inventory which has got depleted. So there are a lot of things like that happening. You've got to wait for things to sort of normalize over the next couple of months, and it is only then that we'll get a true picture of how bad things are. So have a great day ahead. Thank you.